used to think the ocean was silent at night, until the first time something answered me back. Working as a watchman on an oil rig miles from shore, I've learned that silence isn't peace, it's warning. Out here, where the metal groans and the sea never stops moving, we live by 11 strict rules, each one written after someone broke it and didn't come back. I remember the first time I ignored one. I thought I was just hearing things from fatigue. I was wrong. Something was waiting for me during the third shift, and it still remembers my voice. The first time I read Rule 1, never look directly into the dark glass of the observation window during the third shift, I actually laughed. It felt like superstition, the kind of thing old workers pass around to haze the newcomers. I remember standing in that narrow metal corridor, clipboard in hand, as the night watch briefing echoed in my ears. The supervisor, Torres, just handed me the laminated sheet and said, "Read it, follow it, and don't ask questions." I remember glancing out toward the black expanse beyond the glass. It was strange how the sea could look so close and so endless at the same time, like a living thing pressing its weight against the rig. I didn't think much of the rule back then, not until the first time the glass breathed. It started on my second week of the third shift. The rig followed a strict rotation schedule, 3 shifts, each 8 hours, running without pause. The third shift was from midnight to 8, the dead zone, when the rig seemed to forget it was a machine and started feeling like a body. You could hear its lungs in the pipes, its heartbeat in the generators. Torres had told me once that the human mind wasn't built to stay alert between 2 and 5 in the morning. Something about the body's rhythm collapsing. I felt it every night, a crawling sense that I wasn't just tired but watched. The observation deck was my main post, a narrow chamber facing the abyss through reinforced glass. Sometimes I caught my reflection in it, pale and flickering in the dim light, and it felt wrong, like I was watching someone else mimic my movements from the other side. Every surface on the rig hummed with cold vibrations. When you stood still long enough, you could feel them pulse under your boots, syncing with your heartbeat until you couldn't tell which was which. I used to keep the radio chatter going just to fill the silence, but the static had its own rhythm too, whispers that rose and faded like breathing. The engineers said it was cross-frequency interference from the sub-level drills, but I wasn't sure. One night, I caught my own voice coming through the static, soft and delayed, like an echo recorded minutes ago. It repeated my words in perfect tone, but wrong timing, as if it was catching up from somewhere deeper. That was the first time I turned off the radio. That was also the first night the glass fogged from the outside. No matter how deep you go, the ocean is always colder than you think. The engineers said it was physically impossible for condensation to appear outside that glass. The pressure difference alone made it unthinkable. But I saw it, a soft smear of mist, spreading across the window like something exhaled from the deep. I stepped closer, and for a moment it looked like a handprint. I remember my own pulse hammering so hard I could feel it in my ears. I backed away fast, telling myself it was just oil residue or stress. But the next night, the same mark appeared again, only lower this time, as if whatever was out there was testing where I'd stand. The rig had a strange way of isolating sound. Even though the generators roared constantly, I could still pick up faint noises under it, like something scraping metal in long, deliberate strokes. The divers swore it was just sediment or marine life brushing the hull, but when I checked the external cams, the feed flickered, and for half a second, I thought I saw movement. Not swimming, not floating, standing. Something tall and thin, its edges blurred by distortion, as if the water didn't want to show it clearly. The footage corrupted before I could rewind. I tried to report it, but the comms went dead the moment I mentioned the observation window. After that, the nights blurred together. I stopped logging some of the anomalies, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want Torres to think I was cracking under pressure. Everyone knew the third shift could break a man if he wasn't careful. That's why the rules existed, or so they said, to protect sanity as much as survival. But every time I passed the observation window, I felt the urge to look. It wasn't curiosity, It was something quieter, heavier, a pull. The glass seemed darker than it should have been, like the sea had crept closer, swallowing even the reflection of the interior lights. Sometimes, when I walked by, I could see faint movement behind the darkness, as though something large and slow was drifting just beyond visibility. Then came the night Torres disappeared. He was supposed to relieve me at 0400. The comms crackled once, then silence. I waited 15 minutes before going to check the corridor. His coffee mug was still half full in the break room. His ID tag was clipped to the locker, but he wasn't anywhere on the rig. The security cams froze at 3:58, every single one showing static except the observation deck feed. On that monitor, the glass shimmered faintly, almost pulsing. For the first time, I noticed something, a faint glow moving on the other side. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat reflected in deep water. And for reasons I still can't explain, I stepped closer. It wasn't curiosity this time, it was compulsion. The closer I got, the more my reflection faded, replaced by something darker, something with eyes that didn't align with mine. The air felt thicker, and I realized the hum of the generators had gone completely silent. The rig wasn't breathing anymore. Only I was. My hand lifted toward the glass before I even realized it, drawn to the faint pulse on the other side. Just before my fingertips touched, the lights flickered, and for one impossible instant, I saw Torres' face staring back at me, eyes wide, mouth moving as though screaming underwater. I stumbled back, hitting the console, and the power surged on again. The window was empty. I filed the report, of course. The official record said Torres fell overboard during routine inspection. But I knew better. His ID, his boots, his mug, all still here. What wasn't here was his reflection. The next night, when I walked past the glass again, I caught sight of two silhouettes in the reflection, mine and his, standing slightly behind me, unmoving. I didn't turn around. I didn't breathe. I just walked backward until the door shut between us. That was when I finally understood why the rule existed and why it wasn't superstition at all. Now every time I take the third shift, I keep the lights low and never stand close to the glass. Sometimes I hear faint tapping from outside, as though someone is asking to come in. Sometimes the fog returns, shaped like a hand pressed against the window. I never look. I write my logs. I keep my head down and I wait for daylight, though daylight doesn't mean much this far out. But I can feel it now. Whatever's behind that window, it doesn't move like a fish. It doesn't breathe like a man. It waits, and the glass between us feels thinner every night. The last time I walked past it, I swore I saw my reflection blink before I did. I didn't sleep after what happened with the glass. The next morning, I sat in the mess hall with my coffee gone cold, staring at the steel walls that seemed to hum like a restless animal. The others avoided eye contact, pretending nothing strange had happened, but I could tell they knew something was wrong. The rig has a way of keeping secrets. Every metal plate, every bolt seems to listen. That night, as I took over the third shift again, I remembered Rule 2. Never answer any voice that calls your name from outside the rig. And I wondered how anyone could mistake a voice underwater for a human one. By the end of that shift, I understood exactly why the rule existed. The wind had died down, and the sea outside was almost too still. The generators thrummed like a heartbeat somewhere far away, steady but faint. I made my rounds through the lower corridor, checking valves and pressure gauges that clicked softly in the dark. The observation deck was locked off since Torres' disappearance, sealed under investigation. That should have made me feel safer, but the quiet made it worse. Every time I passed a vent or hatch, I heard the faintest sound of movement, slow, deliberate, almost like someone dragging a hand along the metal from the other side. I kept the flashlight trained ahead and moved fast. I told myself the noise was the tide shifting against the structure. But the tide doesn't whisper your name. It came around 3:12. The PA system crackled, just once, then went dead. A few seconds later, through the hum of the machinery, I heard my name. It wasn't over the intercom. It came from outside, through the wall. A soft, steady voice, muffled by layers of steel and water, calling me the way my mother used to when I was late coming home. My breath froze halfway up my throat. The voice came again, clearer this time, closer, like it was pressed right against the hull. I stepped back automatically, staring at the wall, waiting for the sound to repeat. It did. Only this time, it didn't sound like my mother. There's something deeply wrong about hearing familiarity in a place that shouldn't have it. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. The voice kept repeating my name, each time more insistent, like it was learning how to shape the syllables better. I wanted to believe it was an echo of the sea, pressure, distortion, resonance, but the pattern was too human, too patient. When I finally forced myself to move, I went straight for the control room and sealed the inner doors. The noise stopped the instant the latch clicked. That silence was worse. It felt like holding your breath at the edge of something huge. When I reported the event during shift change, no one laughed this time. The new supervisor, Singh, just nodded slowly, scribbled something in the logbook, and said, "You heard it, didn't you?" His tone made it clear I wasn't the first. He told me the rule existed because once years ago a diver named Alvarez had answered. They found his suit later, empty, the glass visor shattered from the inside. Singh said, "The voice always sounds like someone you trust. That's how it gets you to open a door. That's how it learns the way inside." For the next few nights, I avoided the lower decks completely. I stayed near the comm station, where the soft chatter of surface contact made me feel less alone, but the voices were patient. By the fifth night, I started hearing them through the vents, softer now, like they were testing the rig's weak points. Sometimes they whispered words I couldn't make out, other times they just repeated my name, dragging it out, syllable by syllable. The strangest part was how the sound always matched the direction I was facing, as if it knew where I was. Even with the radios off, the walls seemed to breathe those syllables. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd hear the whisper again, closer, always outside. One night I jolted awake to find the door handle trembling slightly, a faint rhythmic movement like someone trying to open it from the other side. I didn't dare speak or move. The pressure gauges in the corner ticked faster, reacting to something unseen. Then faintly, I heard Tora's voice. Not a memory, not a recording, his exact voice, tired and calm, saying, "It's all right, man, it's just me." My chest tightened so hard it hurt. I stared at the door, half wanting to open it, half praying not to. I whispered his name back before I realized what I'd done. The sound stopped, complete silence, as if the rig itself held its breath. I knew immediately I'd made a mistake. My reflection in the window across the hall shifted a fraction too slow to match me. My radio blinked to life without static, a single whisper sliding through, "Thank you." Then it went dark again. I backed away from the console and didn't move until sunrise. After that, the crew started noticing smaller things. Tools misplaced, pressure doors opening on their own, voices on open channels that no one had activated. Singh set stricter patrol routes and ordered everyone to keep their radios off unless responding to direct calls. It didn't help. The voices adapted, echoing from places that shouldn't transmit sound, the vents, the pipes, the glass. One night a mechanic named Rafiq swore he heard his daughter crying from the outside walkway. He ran toward the hatch before anyone could stop him. By the time they pulled him back, his eyes were unfocused, his lips moving silently like he was still listening. He didn't speak again after that. I tried to keep my mind on procedure, counting minutes, checking panels, writing in my log just to anchor myself. But the longer you're down here, the less the rules feel like safety and more like confessions left by the last sane man. Every time I passed the observation deck door, I heard faint movement inside, even though it was sealed shut. The fog had returned to the glass, and this time, it pulsed with the rhythm of breathing. Sometimes I caught a flicker of a shape beyond it, long fingers trailing the surface from outside. It knew my name now. It whispered it in the same tone I'd used when I answered. On the 12th night, Singh gathered us in the control room. Half the crew was gone, sent topside or missing without record. He read through the rule sheet slowly, pausing at mine, his voice low and deliberate. Never answer any voice that calls your name from outside the rig. Then he looked at me. If it knows your name, it can follow you through reflections, he said. That's how it spreads. His words made something click inside me, a realization that the rules weren't written to protect us from the ocean. They were written to protect us from ourselves, because curiosity is the only doorway this thing needs. Now when I walk the corridors during the third shift, I hum softly under my breath just to drown out the whispers. Sometimes I feel them hum back, slightly out of sync, like a broken echo. The glass in the observation deck is still sealed, but I know what waits beyond it. It's learning the others' voices now, blending them together like a choir made of everyone we've lost. And sometimes when I hear it from far down the hall, it doesn't even bother calling my name anymore. It just laughs, softly, like it already knows I'll answer again. After what happened with the voices, I stopped trusting the walls, the vents, even my own reflection. But down here, paranoia doesn't get you far. You still have to work, still have to log everything, still have to stare at those monitors that make you feel like you're the last living thing under miles of black water. The external camera feeds were our only windows to the outside, 12 in total, scattered across the rig structure, one facing the open sea, one above the main deck, others angled toward the support beams and drill shafts. They ran 24 hours, though no one ever wanted the midnight watch. The images looked wrong at night, too still, too alive in their stillness. That's why Rule 3 existed. Never use the external cameras after midnight. Singh enforced that one more strictly than any other. The sea stops reflecting light after midnight, he told us once. And what you see after that isn't a reflection. None of us understood what he meant until we saw it for ourselves. My next night shift started at 23 o'clock. By then the whispers had quieted, or maybe I'd just learned to tune them out. The corridors smelled faintly of oil and rust. Normal, comforting. But around 0:45, the radio crackled. A short burst of static, then a voice. Not words, just a low hum, like someone breathing into the channel. I froze, glanced at the comm board, and saw something that shouldn't have been there. Cam 4, external feed active. No one had touched the cameras. The system had been locked. I hesitated, hand hovering over the switch, then forced myself to look. At first, the feed was pure static, rolling gray waves. Then slowly, an image cleared. The outer maintenance walkway, slick with condensation. The sea beyond was black, the horizon gone. The light from the rig's flood lamps cut through the mist like dull knives. Nothing moved. I was about to shut it off when something shifted near the bottom corner of the screen. It looked like a shadow sliding across the frame, but the light wasn't changing. It wasn't cast by anything. It was moving against the light, like it was swallowing it. I leaned closer. The figure, if it was a figure, paused near the railing, its form blurring in and out, as if the camera couldn't focus on it properly. The shape tilted slightly, as though looking back toward the rig, toward me, then the feed flickered. The timestamp glitched. 0:47 turned to 3:12, then 19:07, then back again. The camera feed split into 4 quadrants, showing different angles that didn't exist. Each view showed the same walkway, but in one, the sea was completely calm. In another, it boiled with movement, like something massive stirred beneath the surface. The static began to pulse, faintly in rhythm with my own heartbeat. I shut off the screen and backed away, breathing hard, but the reflection on the console glass still showed the walkway. The feed was off, the monitor black, but the reflection wasn't. The figure stood at the edge of the railing now, motionless. The glass vibrated under my palm, as though something on the other side was pressing back. I stumbled out of the control room and nearly ran into Singh. He saw my face, didn't ask questions, just said, You looked, didn't you?" His voice was flat, tired. "That's how it starts." He told me about the previous night operator, a man named Keller, who'd broken Rule 3 2 years ago. Keller had checked the feeds after a sensor alarm went off at 2 o'clock. The next morning, they found him sitting in the control room chair, eyes open, unblinking, pupils blown wide like he'd stared into a floodlight. The video log showed him watching the monitors for 6 straight hours, completely still. When they tried to replay the footage, all 12 cameras displayed the same image. Keller's face reflected in the glass, only it was smiling, even though the real Keller wasn't. After that, the surface team disabled the remote access for good, but somehow, the feeds still turn themselves on after midnight. No one knows why. Some say the rig records what it sees on its own, even without power. Others say it's not recording, it's replaying. The following night, I woke to a faint glow coming from the corridor window. Not the soft amber of the interior lamps, but the cold blue of a camera monitor. I followed it to the end of the hall, where one of the sealed access panels had come online by itself. The screen showed the outer walkway again, but this time, the figure was gone. The only thing visible was a handprint smeared against the camera lens from the outside. 5 long, uneven marks pressed into the glass, dripping upward. The system timestamp read 0 o'clock exactly. I shut down the terminal and yanked the fuse for that section, but the monitor stayed lit for a full minute before fading. As it went dark, I saw my own reflection for a split second, and behind it the faint outline of someone standing where the sea should have been. The face was blurred, stretched, but the eyes, they were perfectly clear. They were watching me. After that, I covered every reflective surface in my quarters, mirrors, screens, even the window slats. Singh didn't question it. He just nodded and said, "You'll want to stay off Rule 4 next." I asked what it was. He looked at me for a long time, then said, "If you hear tapping inside the hull, you never tap back." By the time Singh told me about Rule 4, the rig had gone quiet again. Not peaceful quiet, the kind that listens back. I tried convincing myself the noise from the external cameras had been stress, fatigue, or the recycled air playing tricks on my perception. But the longer I stayed below, the more the silence felt like it was holding its breath. The walls hummed faintly with pressure, a living pulse beneath the metal, and sometimes that pulse didn't feel like it came from the machinery at all. That night, the shift stretched longer than usual. Singh was asleep in his quarters, and I was alone in the control room, reading the maintenance log just to stay awake. The hour markers blinked forward, 1:12, 1:13, and that's when I heard it. A single dull thud from somewhere behind the wall. It was slow, heavy, and distinct, like someone knocking from the other side of a hollow door. I froze, my mind instantly recalling the line burned into the rule sheet. If you hear tapping inside the hull, you never tap back. At first I thought I imagined it. The pressure down here plays strange tricks with sound. Vibrations can travel through steel, warping in unpredictable ways. But then it came again, this time closer to the floor. Thud, pause, thud, thud. It wasn't rhythmic like machinery. It was questioning, like something was waiting for an answer. I reached for my radio, half expecting Singh to call in and ask if I'd heard it too. Nothing but static. I stood there for almost a minute, listening. Then curiosity got the better of me. I knelt beside the wall and pressed my ear against the cold metal. The sound came again, faint but unmistakable. A hollow echo, like knuckles on steel. Then something new, a faint scrape, like fingernails dragging lightly against the inner side of the hull. I pulled back fast, heart pounding, and forced myself to breathe. It was a simple rule, never tap back. And yet every instinct I had screamed at me to answer, to prove there was someone, or something, on the other side that could be explained. I raised my hand, hovered it inches from the wall, then froze. The air around me shifted. It's hard to describe, but the pressure changed, as if the entire rig inhaled at once. Then the tapping came again, faster this time. Thud, thud, thud. I counted the beats. It wasn't random. It was mimicking my heartbeat. The generator lights flickered. One of the monitors blinked on by itself, showing static for half a second before going dark again. I backed away from the wall and grabbed the intercom. "Sing," I whispered. "You awake?" No answer, just a low hiss, like someone breathing very close to the mic on the other end. Then the tapping stopped. The silence that followed was worse. The kind of silence that feels like a choice. I tried to focus on my breathing, on the hum of the machinery, on anything normal. I must have dozed off at the console, because the next thing I remember is waking to the distant sound of metal groaning. Not from strain, from movement. The kind of bending steel you only hear when something is crawling along the outside of the rig. The sound moved slowly, circling the outer ring, scraping and shifting with careful weight. Whatever it was big, too big for a diver, too steady for drifting debris. The rig swayed slightly, a tremor rippling through the floor beneath my boots. I thought of Singh's words, "If it knocks, it knows you're here." I didn't move for almost an hour. When Singh finally came to relieve me, he looked at me like he already knew. "You heard it," he said quietly. "Everyone hears it once." He poured 2 cups of coffee, set one beside me, and added, "It's not knocking to scare you. It's asking to be let in." He told me about an old welder named Hawthorne, one of the original rig builders. They said he vanished during an inspection shift years ago. When they found his equipment floating outside the hull, his helmet was cracked from the inside. His fingerprints were embedded in the inner steel, near one of the joints, right where the knocking usually comes from. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound became suspect. The hum of the air pumps, the creak of the deck plates, even my own pulse. Around 3:30, I heard it again. This time softer, 3 taps, perfectly spaced, echoing through the bulkhead near my bunk. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The sound repeated, then faded slowly, replaced by something worse, the faint rhythm of my own tapping, returning from the other side of the wall, like an echo that had learned. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled the blanket over my head, whispered to myself that it was just the pipes, just the sea pressure, just anything but what it sounded like. Eventually, the noise stopped. I fell asleep sitting upright, gripping the wrench I kept beside my bunk. When I woke up, there were dents in the wall, 5 small circular impressions, spaced like fingertips, and below them, scratched into the paint, were 3 words still waiting: Tom. I didn't tell Singh, I didn't tell anyone. I just made sure my shifts never extended past midnight again. But the tapping hasn't stopped. It follows me from room to room now, softer each time, patient, like it knows I'm running out of places to hide. And if what Singh said is true, I'm starting to understand what the tapping really means. It's not coming from outside. It's trying to remind me of something I let in a long time ago. Sleep had become impossible after that night. The tapping hadn't stopped. It had only learned patience. It came less often now, softer, as if it wanted me to forget, to start ignoring it. Singh told me that's when the rig starts choosing who it wants to keep. His words stuck with me, twisting in my head during every silent hour. I tried to focus on routine, checking gauges, logging readings, pretending we were still part of the world above. But isolation has its own clock down here. Time doesn't move forward. It drips, slow and heavy, like water down a rusted pipe. The first alarm came during lunch, a low mechanical wail echoing through the halls, followed by the automated voice. Pressure anomaly detected. Section C4. Singh barely reacted. He told me it happens often. Minor shifts. Nothing dangerous. He silenced it with a code on the panel and went back to eating. But even after it stopped, I swore I could still hear the hum reverberating faintly in the walls. That's when he looked at me and said the next rule, quietly, almost like a confession. Never open the maintenance hatch after the third alarm. That afternoon, the second alarm sounded. This time, it was sharper, louder, the kind of noise that digs into your spine. Singh looked up from his console, eyes narrowing. "Ignore it," he said. "Just a false reading." He said it fast, like he was reassuring himself more than me. I wanted to ask why the rule even existed, if it was harmless, but his face made me stop. We waited, and when the sound finally faded, the silence that followed felt too thick, as if something outside was listening to make sure we stayed quiet. That night, I couldn't sit still. I kept glancing toward the corridor that led to Section C4, the area closest to the outer hull. Singh was asleep in his cabin, snoring faintly. The lights above me flickered once, then steadied. I tried to shake off the unease, but then it happened, the third alarm. It didn't sound like the others. It began as a soft hum, rising until the entire rig seemed to vibrate with it. The automated voice stuttered, glitched mid-sentence, and then went silent. The sound continued, lower, slower, like the rig itself was breathing. I stood up, half hypnotized, and followed the sound to the hatch at the end of the corridor. The red emergency light spun lazily above it, painting the metal in bloody rotations. I knew what the rule said: never open the maintenance hatch after the third alarm. But the handle was trembling, not from pressure, from something on the other side. The vibration had rhythm, almost like the same tapping I'd heard before, only deeper, heavier, and coming from inside the hatch this time. "Don't," I whispered to myself, but my hand moved anyway. The closer I got, the louder it became, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. My fingers brushed the cold steel of the handle, and instantly, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was total. Even the machinery hum cut out. The whole rig felt dead. Then something shifted behind the door. A faint scrape, followed by the unmistakable hiss of water against metal. Only, it wasn't water. It sounded thick, wet, but not fluid. Something dragging. I stumbled backward, eyes fixed on the hatch. That's when Singh appeared at the other end of the hall, flashlight in hand, his voice shaking. "Step away from it, now." He looked terrified, more than I'd ever seen him. He didn't shout, didn't explain, just reached for the manual override and sealed the hatch shut with a hiss. "You can't ever touch that door after the third alarm," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's not the sea that wants in after that." We sat in silence for a long time, listening. From the other side of the hatch came one last sound, a low groan, almost human, like someone taking their last breath. Then a slow drag, fading downward, until the pressure in the walls eased again. Singh turned off the red light and whispered, "It only knocks 3 times a year. The last one always comes for someone." Later in the control room, I asked him what he meant. He told me about the crew before us, a small maintenance team stationed here 5 years back. During one storm, their pressure alarms went off 3 times in a single night. The log showed one of them, a mechanic named Rivas, opening the hatch after the third. The next morning, there was no trace of him, only wet footprints leading from the hatch to the main deck, then stopping at the edge of the catwalk, as if he'd walked straight into the sea. Singh leaned closer then, whispering something that still keeps me awake. "When you open it, it doesn't let the sea in. It lets out what we keep down here." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask, but now, every time the first alarm sounds, I feel my stomach twist. I listen for the second, praying it never comes. And if the third one ever does again, I know I won't be able to stop myself from looking. Because lately, I've started hearing faint knocks from behind that hatch. Slow, deliberate, familiar, like it's tapping out a rhythm I almost recognize, and I can't tell anymore if it's trying to get in, or if it's trying to remind me that I already opened it once before. By the time I reached my 6th week on the rig, I thought I'd seen every nightmare this place could show me. The ocean had its own rhythm, a heartbeat of pressure, darkness, and sound. that no man could ever truly get used to. But the fog was different. It wasn't natural down here. We were more than 600 meters below the surface. There wasn't supposed to be fog, and yet, sometimes during the third shift, a pale mist would drift across the upper deck, as if the sea itself had decided to breathe on us. That's why the rule existed. Never walk the upper deck alone during fog conditions. Singh always made sure we stayed inside when it rolled in. The fog wasn't dense. Not at first. It would start thin, translucent, the kind that makes the lights glow like halos. Then slowly it thickened, moving against the wind, crawling across the deck until even the safety rails disappeared. Singh said it carried voices of the drowned, but I thought he was just keeping the new crew from panicking. That changed the night. Peterson went missing. It started at 2:10. We were running diagnostic checks when the temperature monitors began to drop, slowly at first, then in sharp dips, like something cold was spreading through the metal. The cameras flickered, showing faint wisps curling over the deck. Singh's face went pale. He grabbed the radio and ordered a lockdown, but Peterson, the rookie engineer, had already gone topside. He said he heard a loose chain whipping in the wind and went to secure it before it damaged the railing. I remember hearing his boots on the metal stairs, the sound fading into the low hum of the foghorn. The feed showed him moving through the mist, flashlight beam cutting faint tunnels of white through the haze. He turned once toward the camera, gave a thumbs up, then vanished into the fog. For a full minute, nothing moved. Then faintly through the comms came Peterson's voice. "Hey, who's out here with me?" Singh froze. "Don't answer him," he whispered, like Peterson could hear us. The fog thickened on the monitor, swallowing the last of the deck lights. Then Peterson's voice came again, closer to the mic this time. I said, "Who's out here?" His breathing was fast now, uneven. Then silence, followed by something else, the sound of footsteps that weren't his. Too heavy, too slow. The radio crackled. Singh, "I think someone's on the cane." His voice cut off mid-sentence. Static filled the room, high-pitched and sharp, forcing me to pull off my headset. When it finally cleared, all we heard was the faint echo of metal scraping, like something being dragged. Singh slammed the emergency seal and shut down the exterior hatches. "He broke the rule," he said under his breath. "Now we can't bring him back." When the fog cleared 3 hours later, we went topside in silence. The deck was slick with condensation, every surface glistening like glass. Peterson's flashlight lay near the railing, its beam flickering weakly toward the sea. His boots were still there too, neatly placed side by side, as if he'd stepped out of them. No sign of a struggle, no footprints leading away. Just a faint imprint in the mist, shaped like a hand pressed flat against the metal. Fingers stretched wide, long and uneven. We never found him. Singh logged it as a pressure-related incident, but no one believed that. After that, the fog returned every few nights, always between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. The temperature sensors would dip, the lights would dim, and if you listened closely, you could hear faint voices moving through it, not speaking exactly, but breathing words that almost made sense. I swore I heard Peterson once, whispering from somewhere beyond the mist. "It's not fog, it's the water trying to remember." Weeks later, I broke the rule myself, not by choice. A storm hit while Singh was topside checking the antenna array. The rig shook under the waves, alarms blaring, power flickering. When I climbed the ladder to find him, the fog had already rolled in, dense silver, alive. It clung to my skin, cold and damp, humming faintly. The deck lights pulsed dimly, each glow swallowed as quickly as it appeared. I shouted for Singh, my voice muffled like the fog was absorbing sound. Then ahead of me, a silhouette. Broad shoulders, heavy stride. Singh. Relief hit me like a wave. I started running toward him, calling his name. But the closer I got, the stranger his movement looked. His arms hung too long, his head tilted in sharp, jerky angles. like he was listening to something beneath the floor. I slowed, one step away, and then he turned. It wasn't Sing. The face was wrong, stretched, featureless, except for two hollow shapes where eyes should have been. The fog behind it rippled, and I swear I saw faces inside it, faint, distorted, like people pressing against glass from the other side. My flashlight flickered once, twice, then died completely. When it came back, the figure was gone. Only the mist remained, curling around my boots, like it wanted to pull me in. I stumbled back toward the hatch, heart hammering, when I heard a voice behind me. Sing's voice this time, clear, sharp. "Don't move." I froze. The real Sing emerged from the fog to my left. Flashlight steady, face pale. "You looked at it, didn't you?" he said. "They can't stand being seen. That's how they remember you." We sealed the hatch behind us, bolting it twice. Sing wouldn't talk for the rest of the shift. He just kept muttering, "It's thicker each time. It's learning the layout." I haven't gone topside since. But last night, I woke to find condensation on my window, fog, inside my cabin. The kind that moves when you breathe. And when I wiped the glass, I saw a reflection behind me that didn't belong. It looked almost like Peterson. Almost. After the fog incident, I started hearing myself in places I hadn't spoken. Not echoes, not recordings, just my voice, from other rooms, saying things I hadn't said. It began subtly, as if the rig was repeating me a second too late, like a bad radio delay. But then the timing changed. The voice began speaking first. I'd hear it through the vents, through the comms, sometimes faintly beneath the hum of the generators, saying my name in the exact tone I used when I spoke to myself. Sing noticed before I did. He left a note on the control panel, written in pencil. Rule 7, never respond to a voice that sounds like your own. That night, I stayed in the control room past my shift, watching the monitors. The rig was quiet again. Too quiet. The ocean outside was endless black, a wall of pressure. My reflection in the screen looked sickly pale under the light, eyes hollowed out by insomnia. Then from the corridor behind me, I heard a whisper, "Hey Tom." My heart froze. It was my voice. The inflection, the tone, everything, down to the tired rasp I'd developed after weeks of sleepless nights. It sounded amused, almost playful. "You awake?" I didn't move, didn't breathe. The rules had become survival scripture by now, and this one felt heavier than the rest. Never respond. Still, the silence made it worse. The voice came again, closer this time. "It's me. You can come out now." I slowly turned toward the door. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint emergency light, pulsing from the end of the corridor. I could see the faint outline of someone standing there, tall still, head tilted. My stomach turned. I forced my eyes away, staring at the floor until the figure disappeared from my peripheral vision. The comm speaker crackled to life, sharp and sudden. "Tom," it said again. "Don't ignore me." My voice, but angrier, louder. The sound echoed through every speaker at once, overlapping slightly, like 100 versions of me were all trying to talk at the same time. I pressed my palms over my ears, but the voice wasn't just in the room, it was inside my head. Sing burst in then, wild-eyed, wrench in hand. He didn't ask what was happening. He went straight to the breaker panel and shut off the intercom system entirely. The room fell silent again, except for our breathing. "It heard you," he muttered. "It only speaks when you're close to seeing it." I wanted to ask what it was, but the words caught in my throat. The rules didn't explain why. They only told you what not to do. Sing told me about the first time he heard it, months before I arrived. He'd been alone in the engine bay, when a voice called out from behind the coolant tanks saying, "Help me lift this panel." Same voice, same tone, same pitch. He answered without thinking. Said, "Yeah, 1 sec." When he turned the corner, he saw himself standing there. Not a reflection himself, down to the oil stain on his uniform, holding the same wrench in the same hand. It smiled, Singh whispered. Then it started copying what I hadn't done yet. He said it reached for him, fingers moving just a second before his own. That's when he ran, didn't look back, didn't stop until he sealed the door behind him. The other Singh never followed, but the cameras showed 2 heat signatures in that room for the next 3 days. One moving, one perfectly still. I didn't want to believe him. But then the voice came back the next night. I was checking the airlock pressure valves when I heard myself whisper from directly behind me. You shouldn't be here. I turned instantly, wrench raised, but the corridor was empty. The light above me flickered once, twice, then steadied. When I looked back, there were fingerprints on the valve I'd just sealed, identical to mine. Over the next few days, I started seeing movement just outside my vision, shadows shaped like me, standing at the edge of the light. Once during inspection, I caught my own reflection in the viewport window smiling, a split second after I stopped. It was small at first, but undeniable. Singh said the trick was not to engage, not even mentally. It feeds on recognition, he warned. If you think it's you, then it is. One night, while logging pressure readings, I heard a sound from my quarters, a faint hum, like someone quietly talking to themselves. I approached the door slowly. From inside I heard my voice say, "You're late." My hand trembled on the handle. I knew the rule, but my body moved anyway. I opened the door. Inside the lights were dim, flickering faintly from the emergency strip near the floor. My bunk was empty, but sitting in my chair was me. Same uniform, same exhausted eyes. It looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Finally caught up." I froze. It stood slowly, moving exactly like I did. Every twitch mirrored. For a moment we just stared at each other. Then it tilted its head, a motion slightly too slow, too smooth. "You should rest," it said. I backed away, reaching for the door, but the figure moved faster. Its hand landed on my shoulder, ice cold through the fabric. I felt the pressure of fingers, real and solid. I shoved backward, slamming the door shut, and stumbled down the hall. When Singh found me, I couldn't even speak. He didn't ask. He just handed me a marker and said, "Write something only you would know, somewhere private. Every time you doubt, check it. If it's changed, don't go back to that room." I did what he said. Wrote a single word on the inside of my locker door, "Alive." 2 days later, when I opened it again, the word had been changed. Same handwriting, same ink, but it said "almost." And I don't know if the voice that reads these logs now is still mine. The first time I heard it, I thought it was a dream. A dull, rhythmic clang echoing through the hull, faint but steady, like someone knocking from outside the rig. It came in 3 slow taps, paused, then 3 more. At first I assumed it was the current, or a loose pipe vibrating against the metal. But when the sound repeated exactly, same rhythm, same spacing, I knew it wasn't mechanical. Singh and I were the only ones on the night shift that week, and the outer hatch was sealed, triple locked, pressure coated. No one could be outside, not unless they wanted their lungs crushed and bones turned to powder. Still, I heard it again. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. Singh was asleep in his bunk, so I went to check the cameras. The feed from the hatch was dark. The floodlight outside had been offline since the last storm. Static crawled across the monitor, but for a split second, between the distortion, I thought I saw movement. A faint outline pressed against the glass viewport, human-shaped. My stomach turned to ice. I remembered the note scrawled into the manual cover when I first arrived here. Rule 8. Never open the outer hatch after midnight, no matter who's knocking. I muted the intercom and stared at the black and white static, waiting. The knocks continued. Slow, deliberate, closer than before. Then a voice followed, muffled by water and steel, but unmistakably human. "Tom," it said, in a low, trembling tone. "Please, it's freezing. Let me in." It was the voice of Williams, our previous diver. But Williams had been dead for 3 weeks. I remember pulling back from the screen, shaking. The voice kept calling my name, more desperate each time. "Tom, it's me. I made it back." I tried to convince myself it was a recording, a trick of sound through the pipes. But then the comm light flashed red. Incoming signal. From the outer hatch panel. Someone or something was manually trying to hail us from outside. I grabbed Singh. He was furious at first, ready to chew me out for waking him, until he heard it too. The knocking. The voice. He went pale. "Don't answer," he said. "Don't speak. Don't move. Don't look out the viewport." Then he did something strange. He turned off every light in the corridor. The rig fell into complete darkness, save for the emergency glow strip near the floor. "It can't see well in the dark," he whispered. "But if you open that hatch, it'll know you're here." The banging grew louder, shaking the metal. The voice changed. It started crying, then laughing, then crying again. "It's cold," it whimpered. "It's so cold down here. Please." Singh pressed his fingers to his lips and motioned for me to stay silent. The sound went on for almost half an hour before it finally stopped. We didn't sleep after that. The next morning, Singh checked the outer hatch manually. The pressure logs showed it had been accessed externally at 0:37 a.m. But that was impossible. There's no platform, no surface, no oxygen within 2 miles of our location, just the abyss. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the numbers, then scribbled something into his pocket notebook before walking away. That night, it happened again. But this time, the voice was mine. "Tom," it said softly through the comms. "It's safe now. You can open the hatch." My breath caught in my throat. It sounded calm, almost reassuring. I backed away from the panel, my hand trembling over the breaker switch. The voice came again, firmer this time. "You need to let me in. They locked me out." My skin crawled. I shut off the feed, but the sound didn't stop. It wasn't coming from the speakers anymore. It was coming from the metal walls themselves, vibrating through the rig like a heartbeat. Singh appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. He was holding his notebook, pages open to a fresh line. "If it sounds like someone you know, it isn't. And if it sounds like you, run." Then just as suddenly, the entire rig lost power. The lights blinked out, and for a moment, there was only the distant groan of the ocean pressing against us. The emergency lights flickered back on a few seconds later, but Singh was gone. The corridor where he'd been standing was empty. I called for him, shouted his name down the hall, but only my echo came back. Then from the direction of the hatch, a voice answered. "Tom," it said, in Singh's voice this time. "It's stuck. Help me open it." I wanted to run, but my body moved on. Instinct. I found myself halfway to the hatch before my mind caught up. The knocks began again. 3 slow, heavy hits, metal on metal. The sound vibrated through my chest. I stopped 5 feet from the door. The small round window was fogged over. Something pressed against it from the outside. I could make out the faint shape of a hand. I whispered, "Sing." The voice answered immediately. Perfect tone, perfect cadence. "Yeah, I'm right here." But something about the way it spoke was wrong. Too smooth, no breathing between words. I took one more step forward, and that's when I noticed it. The hand on the glass. It had too many fingers. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. The voice changed again, lower this time, almost guttural. "You shouldn't have looked." The lights flickered once more, and the hand disappeared. The knocking stopped. By morning, the pressure logs showed no external contact, no footprints, no impact marks. But Singh never came back. His bunk was empty, his tools still on the workbench, coffee still half full. I tried the comms for hours, but all I heard was static. Then around 2 a.m. the next night, The knocking returned. 3 slow hits. Pause. 3 more. And when I checked the monitor, Singh was standing outside the hatch, grinning through the glass, his eyes black and empty. When the alarms first screamed through the rig, I thought it was another power surge. The metal shuddered, the lights flickered red, and that low-frequency hum started vibrating in my chest, the kind that makes your teeth hurt. I rushed to the control deck, expecting to see Singh there, forgetting for a moment that he was gone. The consoles were blinking in random sequences, pressure alerts flashing across every screen. But what froze me wasn't the warnings. It was the live feed from Level C, the maintenance deck deep below the rig. The cameras showed the corridor submerged in shadow, but something was moving in it. Slow, like it was crawling against gravity. I remembered Rule 9. Never descend below Level C after the alarms go off, even if you're ordered to. I used to think those alarms meant a leak, or maybe a system's fault, but now I'm sure they were something else. A warning, not from the rig's mechanics, but from whatever built those rules long before me. Still, I heard the intercom crackle to life, a voice cutting through static. "Tom, this is Control. You need to check Level C immediately." My throat went dry. Control. There hadn't been anyone at Control since the first storm took out our uplink 2 nights ago. I tried to respond, but the line hissed, the voice repeating the same sentence in the exact same rhythm, same tone, over and over, like a recording caught in a loop. I should have ignored it. I should have remembered Singh's notebook, how he'd crossed out the lower decks with red ink, and written "do not go" in block letters. But I couldn't help myself. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe guilt, maybe I just needed to see something alive again. So I grabbed a flashlight, clipped my badge, and made my way down the maintenance shaft. The air grew colder with each step, thick with salt, and something sour, like rotting kelp. By the time I reached Level B, the metal floor beneath my boots was damp. By the time I reached Level C, it was slick. The door opened with a long hiss, and I stepped inside. The entire deck was darker than I remembered, the overhead lights pulsing weakly like they were underwater. A thin layer of mist hovered above the floor, and every sound echoed back too clearly, as if the corridor itself were hollow. My flashlight cut through the dark in a narrow beam, illuminating the wet walls and the pressure pipes that lined them. I followed the sound of dripping water, only to realize it wasn't water. It was thicker, slower, leaving a dark trail wherever it landed. The alarms cut off suddenly, replaced by silence so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. Then came a whisper, faint but clear. "Keep walking." I froze, turning toward the sound, but there was no one there. "Tom," it said again, closer this time, behind me. "You're almost there." The voice was wrong, flat, like it wasn't shaped by lungs. My flashlight flickered, and in that brief blackout, I saw movement at the far end of the corridor. Tall, thin, bending at angles that made no sense. When the light steadied, it was gone. I told myself to turn back, but curiosity pinned me in place. There was a hatch at the end of the hallway, marked with yellow tape, and the words "Pressure Excess. Do not enter." The same hatch that Singh had warned me about when I first arrived. He said it led to the pump chamber, but no one had opened it in years. I took one step toward it, then another. The air felt thicker the closer I got, like wading through invisible water. The temperature dropped so fast that I could see my breath. My ears popped. Then the voice came again, but this time it sounded like Singh. "Almost done, Tom. Open it." I reached for the wheel on the hatch door, my fingers numb, and started to turn. That's when I saw the reflection in the metal. Not mine, but someone standing directly behind me. A silhouette taller than any man, with arms too long, head tilting slightly like it was studying me. Its outline shimmered, almost liquid, as if the air itself were folding around it. My stomach turned cold, and I bolted for the stairs. But every corridor I took led me back to the same place, the same hatch waiting at the end of the hall. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head. The alarms flared again, so loud I thought my skull would split. But this time, beneath the blare, I heard something else breathing. Not mine. Slow, deep, and impossibly close. I turned, and for the first time, I saw its face, or what passed for one. The skin looked translucent, rippling as if filled with dark water, and inside it, shapes were moving. Hands pressed from within, sliding across its surface, like they were trying to escape. I ran. I don't remember how long or where I went. Just the clanging of my boots, the hiss of vents, the alarms chasing me. When I finally burst through the stairwell and slammed the door shut behind me, I collapsed on the steps, gasping for air. The hatch down below stopped shaking, but something about the silence afterward felt worse than the noise. Back in the control room, the monitors flickered to life. One of the feeds showed level C, but it looked different. Flooded, maybe. Water shimmering across the floor, rising slowly, and in the center of it stood that same figure staring up at the camera, watching me. The timestamp on the footage said it was recorded 6 hours ahead, in the future. I pulled the power switch for the lower decks, severing every circuit connection. The rig moaned, groaned, then fell still. The alarms didn't go off again after that. But sometimes, when the night shift stretches long and the wind dies down, I swear I can still hear the faint metallic echoes coming from below. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more, and every time the elevator panel flickers to life. Level C, waiting for input. The observation window sits at the far end of the mess hall, facing out into the black. It's where most of the new guys go on their first night, hoping to catch a glimpse of something beautiful. Bioluminescent plankton, drifting jellyfish, maybe even the ghostly silhouette of a whale. It's also where the veterans refuse to stand after 3 a.m. I didn't understand why until the night I stayed behind to clean the table and caught movement outside. Just a flicker at first, like a shadow sliding past the glass. I told myself it was the current, but then it stopped, perfectly still, as if it was looking back. That's when I remembered Rule 10. Never look directly into the observation window after 3 a.m. No matter what you think you see. At first, it felt stupid. The window was 6 inches thick, pressure rated and reinforced. What harm could there be in looking? The digital clock above the galley blinked 3:04 a.m. I tried to ignore it, scrubbing the floor with my back to the glass. But then the light shifted. The ocean outside was pitch dark. No floodlights, no reflection. Yet there was light, faint and pulsing, like something bioluminescent drifting closer. I turned, just for a second, and I saw it. It wasn't a fish, not a man either. Its shape was human but wrong, too elongated, too smooth, as if sculpted from the water itself. Its head tilted when I moved, mirroring me perfectly, down to the smallest twitch. My heart pounded, and I blinked hard. When my eyes opened again, it was gone. Only the darkness remained. I exhaled shakily, and told myself I'd imagined it, that exhaustion was playing tricks. But then the reflection in the glass blinked, and I hadn't. My own reflection was no longer matching my movements. It stood still as I took a step back. Its face, my face, began to smile, slow and deliberate, stretching wider than my own could ever go. I stumbled into the counter, knocking over a metal mug that clattered across the floor. Behind me, the air felt heavy, the same deep pressure that always comes before a storm. The reflection moved again, raising its hand, pressing it to the glass. I should have run. Instead, I whispered, "What are you?" The words fogged the window for half a second, and from the other side, my reflection mouthed the same thing back to me. Only its lips didn't stop moving. The lights above flickered, bathing the room in a dull red glow. My reflection's eyes darkened, and I could see something swirling inside them. Not pupils, but movement, like ink drifting through water. I backed away slowly, trying not to blink. Then a faint tapping came from the other side of the glass. rhythmic and patient. Tap, tap, tap. The same pattern from the hatch. I turned off the lights, hoping the darkness would break the illusion. It didn't. The outline on the other side grew brighter, clearer, until it looked almost solid. Then it leaned closer. The glass began to frost from the edges inward, patterns spreading like veins. My breath fogged the air, the temperature dropping fast. I could hear the low hum of the pressure stabilizers struggling to compensate. I reached for the intercom, calling for the control deck, but the line filled with static. Through the noise, a voice whispered, "Don't look away." My hand froze midair. I stared at the mic, but the voice wasn't coming from there. It was inside my head, soft and wet, like words spoken through water. "Stay," it said. "Stay and watch." My reflection moved again. It reached forward, pressed its palm flat against the glass, and when it did, the frost on the inside shifted. A perfect outline of its hand, my hand, appeared, but on my side. I stumbled back, knocking into the bench. The glass pulsed once, like a heartbeat, and then something pushed against it from the other side. The entire window bulged inward, just slightly, like the ocean itself was breathing. I bolted out of the mess hall, slamming the door shut behind me. The sound of tapping continued, faint but steady, following me through the ventilation. When I reached the stairwell, I looked back and froze. The observation window was glowing now, not with light, but with shapes, faces, dozens of them, pressed against the glass from the outside. Some familiar, crew who'd vanished weeks ago. Some I'd never seen before. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering something I couldn't hear but somehow understood. "We're still watching." The power flickered again, plunging the hallway into black. My flashlight clicked on, weak and trembling. The tapping stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I heard something new, a sound like water rushing through the vents. I turned toward the noise just as a drop hit my shoulder. Then another. The ceiling above me was leaking, not seawater, darker, thicker. I wiped it away, and it left a smear like ink across my hand. My heart slammed against my ribs as I realized it wasn't dripping down, it was rising up. The ink-like liquid was creeping along the walls, climbing, tracing paths that led back toward the observation window. I ran for the maintenance lock, pulling the manual seal lever, shutting the mess hall behind reinforced bulkheads. The alarms blared seconds later, registering a pressure breach. But it wasn't the ocean outside, it was something inside the rig trying to get out. Hours passed before the pressure normalized. The next morning, the mess hall was dry, untouched, and the observation window clear. But when I looked closely, I could still see faint handprints on the inside of the glass. Hundreds of them, fading as the light hit. I thought about reporting it to command, but the comms were still dead. That night, when I sat down for my shift, I found a note slipped under the logbook. It wasn't in Singh's handwriting, just one sentence in smeared black ink. "Don't forget to wave back tonight. The horn is the sound we all dread. It's not a sharp blare, not like the alarms or the sirens. It's deeper, so deep you feel it before you hear it, vibrating through the floor, through your chest, through your teeth. It's the kind of sound that doesn't belong to a machine." We were told it was a backup pressure signal, a fail-safe that triggers during storms. But on the third shift, when the air is still and the sea is flat as glass, that horn means something else. I learned that the night after the window incident, when I thought things couldn't get worse, then the ocean itself proved me wrong. I was in the corridor outside the control room when it began, a low hum building until the whole rig seemed to breathe with it. That's when I remembered Rule 11. When the rig's horn sounds without wind, lock every door and do not breathe until it stops. The hum swelled into a moan so low I could feel it in my bones. The lights dimmed, then steadied. The air shifted, not colder but heavier, like the pressure outside was suddenly inside with us. I froze, counting my breaths. My lungs felt thick, each inhale slower than the last. I bolted for the nearest hatch, spinning the wheel and slamming it shut. The sound vibrated through the metal walls, a long, mournful bellow that made the screws rattle. For a moment it felt like the entire rig was tilting forward, as if being pulled towards something vast and unseen beneath us. I pressed my ear against the wall, and that's when I heard them. Footsteps, soft at first, then heavier, echoing through the deck above me. One set became two, then four, then dozens, all moving in slow rhythm with the horn's pulse. The radio crackled alive on the shelf beside me. A voice whispered through static, "Don't breathe." I held my breath, heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. The footsteps stopped. Then something else began. A scraping sound, faint but steady, moving along the outer hull. It started near the observation bay, dragging downward, circling the rig. The horn bellowed again, and for the briefest moment, the sound shifted pitch, like it was answering something. I covered my ears, eyes shut tight, waiting for it to stop. But instead the floor beneath me groaned. The bolts along the seam of the door began to twist, metal flexing like clay. Then came the whispering, so many voices at once, all saying the same thing, too fast to understand. The horn cut out suddenly, leaving a silence so sharp it rang in my head. I gasped for air, lungs burning, but I shouldn't have. The moment I inhaled, the whispers stopped. Then one voice remained, clear, cold, right behind the door. "Why did you breathe?" I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The metal surface felt warm now, pulsing faintly, as if something was pressing against it from the other side. I turned off the lights and waited, every muscle locked in place. A minute passed, then another. Finally the horn sounded again, one short note this time, and everything went still. The pressure eased, the walls cooled. When I opened the hatch an hour later, the hallway was empty, but not untouched. The walls were wet, slick with condensation, and every surface was covered in thin handprints, hundreds of them, reaching upward. I walked toward the mess hall, where the observation window sat silent and black. Outside something vast drifted past, so close I could see its outline blotting out what little light there was. No eyes, no face, just size, a moving darkness that made the rig's steel vibrate. Then it was gone, sinking into the abyss below. By morning the logbook had updated itself. I didn't write the entry, but it was in my handwriting. It read, "Horn sounded, crew lost, all rules confirmed." I don't remember writing it, and I don't remember sleeping. The only thing I remember is the sound that woke me just before dawn, a single breath, drawn in by something standing right next to my bunk. The ocean has its own rules, older than ours, and it doesn't forgive when we forget them. I think Singh knew that. I think that's why he never came back. The rig still groans at night, the horn still moans when the air is still, and sometimes if I'm unlucky enough to be awake when it happens, I can hear footsteps between the blasts, slow, dragging, patient. It's been 12 nights since the last horn. The sea is calm again, the rules are quiet, but I can feel something waiting beneath the surface, something that doesn't need a storm to rise. I don't know how much longer this place will hold, or if anyone will ever find us. I just know one thing. The rules weren't written to protect the rig. They were written to keep what's outside from coming in. And now that the horn's begun to sound again, I think it's already too late.